Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sendhil. Okay, lots to unpack there. I feel like I would have a few follow-up questions for you, but as promised, we're actually going to have the follow-up discussion with a couple more people who are going to be joining us now on the panel. So of course, Sendhil, we just heard from, already met, Professor of Economics and Computer Science at MIT. Joining him is someone with over 25 years of experience in the tech industry, where she has been a driving force for innovation, sustainability, and digital transformation across diverse cultures and organizations. Since joining Microsoft in 2021, she's been a champion for leveraging technology to tackle global challenges. Prior to this, she led cloud-first strategies at Accenture and continues to contribute to the tech ecosystem through her roles on the Executive Committee of Digital Switzerland, among others. She is also a passionate advocate for women in leadership and was recently recognized as one of Switzerland's digital shapers in 2022 and as one of the top 100 by Women in Business magazine. So please, let's give a warm welcome to CEO of Microsoft Switzerland, Catrin Hinkel. Welcome. And rounding out our conversation is an expert in industrial organization, antitrust, and competition policy. His research spans critical topics such as digital platforms, vertical integration, public service broadcasting, and media economics. Currently, he's a professor at the University of Zurich, where his work has influenced how we think about regulation and competition in today's fast-evolving markets. He served as the chief economist of the Federal Communications Commission and was co-director at the Industrial Organization Program at the Center for Economic Policy Research. Most recently, he joined Zalando in 2022 as their inaugural chief economist, where he continues to apply economic insights to real-world business challenges. Please welcome Professor Gregory Crawford. All right, welcome to all of you. Before we get started, just a quick reminder to all of our audiences and at home, we will have time for questions afterwards. And so feel free to use that Mentimeter app, either submit a question or like one, and you know the drill. It's gonna, the more you like it, the higher it's gonna be ranked, and we'll definitely get to it, I'm hoping. Okay, all right, so Just to kind of get us started here, of course, AI is often described as a game changer, right, for the global economy. I think that's the word, AI and then game changing, with promises that range from solving labor shortages to driving unprecedented innovation. But of course, this comes with a growing skepticism about whether these promises really match up to reality, right? So given your diverse backgrounds, we're going to quickly, whatever comes to mind first, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest. How overhyped is AI's current role in the global economy, and why? Gregory.
8.
Okay.
Okay. Why? Because I think that while what we've seen in large language models is genuinely revolutionary for language applications, and I don't think it's necessarily overhyped from a societal perspective, in terms of language use cases. It may be overhyped in terms of stock valuations, because there's some competition that will hopefully distribute those rents to consumers. But I have, and I'm happy to drill deeper in that conversation, I question whether it's a general purpose technology. That same model is a general purpose technology for other very large mainstream use cases. I think we're going to need to see sort of comparable models to be built, and that's going to be expensive.
I'm wondering what you think to that, but we'll get there. Catrin, on a scale of 1 to 10.
It depends. I would say, I would go rather low, 4 maybe. But if you listen to some of the, more fearful reports about AI, you could say it's overhyped at the level of 10 plus, because there's things that are talked about that AI will definitely not be doing, and not, if we set the right direction at this point in time, but there's a lot we can do to make it very positive for us. The other reason I say 4 is because I already see a lot of application that is very real. So we have research cycles for medication being shortened dramatically. We have research cycles for, inventing better batteries shortened dramatically. We have, machine-human interaction made a lot easier and, to the benefit of humans today, using that kind of technology. So I can go into more and more examples of that, but I can see with our customers that this is making a real difference in day-to-day lives and business.
All right.
So I'm going to give 2 numbers, because economists, what's the old
No
joke?
surprise there.
Economists have 2 hands.
Yes.
So, and I think it's very similar to what you said. I think I'd give a 1 and a 10, which is, I think the 1 is very much, I am so optimistic about what can be done. I think it is unbelievably powerful. The 10, because I think when Europeans landed in the Americas, one of the tragedies was they brought with them viruses to which natives did not have any defenses, and it's just these diseases wiped through. When I look at these large language models, they are in many ways a virus like that, but for the mind. And here is their effect on the mind. We sit with them, we use them. It is impossible for us not to believe, oh my God, this thing is intelligent. It's just very hard. They talk to you as if it's a person. It has conversations. That virus, that thing which on the surface looks human and intelligent, but actually behind the scenes it is not what you think and has no intelligence, that's the virus that is sweeping through today, and it has led to some insane hype where it's almost frustrating, where you're like, wow, we did this very cool thing, we did this, discovered problems of judges, and people are like, can't you just ask ChatGPT and have it tell you the answer? I'm like, what are we even talking about here? It's not a magic box. So I'm torn between the 10 and the 1, which is, I think, what you were saying, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. That people are react the way you described to ChatGPT. It is, but to me, the key question is these foundation models in text are amazing, and in drug discovery, and we've seen a few very powerful use cases, right? But to me, for it to have the really kind of impact that it has to have, we have to think of ways to adapt it to other business and policy and societal problems. And to me, that's not at all obvious, because if you can do it out of the box, yes, then the hype is deserved. But I just see lots of frictions that need to be overcome in order to apply it more broadly than the current use cases that we see right now. But maybe others disagree.
Do you anything else to add? I don't know. I see the smiling, and I'm not sure if this is something to add.
I think the power that lies in that, if you look at how it's applied, is I really like your bicycle model. Microsoft talks about co-pilots. The power is not that AI solves everything that needs to be solving, because sometimes it doesn't even know what needs to be solving, most of the times actually. It's us who give that direction. It's us who use the data. It's us who take better educated decisions based on AI. So I think it's about how do we position this technology alongside us humans that gives the answer to the questions. It's not the answer to all questions. That is 42, we all know. But so it's not the answer to all questions. It's the bicycle that we invent to help us get much better answers much faster. But it's still us who need to decide which are the answers that we need.
I don't want to. Sendhil, do you want to come in? Because I have a reply to that. But yeah.
No, go ahead, please.
Okay. So look, I was in Seattle over the weekend, and I heard, and Gen AI was a big topic, and so I heard about Time GPT. Okay, so we have ChatGPT, a language model. This Time GPT, and this is just what someone told me, so hopefully this is right.
Okay.
But even if it's not right, you can imagine it, right? Which it says, imagine all the time series data on the internet, right? And we're going to use that in the way that large language models have used all the text on the internet to train a foundation model, right? And then the question is, could I use that? Imagine this time GPT is just this incredible predictor of time series. Now, I work at Zalando. We have all kinds of problems that rely on. So Zalando, for those that don't know, is the largest European fashion e-commerce platform. And so we have, for example, pricing time series, right? I mean, this is a real problem we have that we devote lots of resources to. Do I believe that I could just take, so we have lots of proprietary data on our customers and the purchases they make based on the prices we charge. Could I feed that into a time GPT and expect that it would predict prices for us better than our current models? I'm sorry, I don't. I just don't. And I think, so for that, now that's one specific use case that's very relevant to business. I mean, business is price, right? So I think, I do think I could imagine a pricing foundation model, but it would require lots of source data on price series. It would require lots of research and compute time. It would require lots of integration with companies' existing organizational processes. Could that come? Yes, but at significant cost. So, and so that's a little bit, that's just one example, but it's that same logic. If we take any business or policy or societal decision, I think we have to think, could the existing models apply there? And if not, then we need new models, and that's where the cost comes in.
Right.
And I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, I think we're actually saying the same thing. I think where we're probably sound like we're saying something different is we're responding to different time horizons. Like if I take what is claimed right now by some of the biggest proponents, it's crazy. Yeah. It just makes no sense. Yeah. That's what you're reacting to.
I mean,
and the evidence doesn't back it up. Whatever. And I think, but at the longer horizon, at the 10, if we put it, I think what's happened is in the last 4 years, we went from having somewhat reasonable expectations to insane expectations. But the reasonable expectations were fantastic. Like we can add a lot of business value. We can add a lot of social value today. Mm-hmm. Can we just have one algorithm out of the box that solves a bunch of stuff? No. But the way I think about this is like, you guys have done this work, GitHub's done this work on something as simple as Code Copilot. It's not out of the box that it worked. There is constant work on making those algorithms work better. There's still innovation on Code Copilot. That's the most narrow task, coding. But we're willing to put energy into it. But if we're willing to put time and energy into that, what about for judges? What about for pricing? What about, it's just, I think we just have to have a more reasonable view that this is a fantastic technology, not a magic technology.
Yeah. And let me pick up on that as well. I mean, I think, sorry.
Okay.
Shortly.
All good. No.
Shortly. I think the thing that's really revolutionary, where there is not maybe enough hype, is this idea that models can somehow capture well attention, right? So that in these foundation models, so that is an innovation. And so to the extent that that innovation can be applied elsewhere, then I agree. Okay. But it comes with time and cost. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I just wanted to...
But then you put me next to you, right?
That's what I call time for a second. Yes, because we'd also like to... I'd like to hear a minute from the audience. You know, we mentioned the polls. And so I want you to go ahead and go to your Mentimeter poll app. And we want to know how often you interact with AI. You know, because here we are, we talk about all of these different uses. You know, is it overhyped? Is it not? Just out of curiosity, how often people actually use AI? And I can't help but wondering how many people may only be referring to text. But you know, there's all kinds. There's other kinds of applications where you could be using AI in your life. But that'll be interesting to see.
Spotify has a new AI DJ. You know.
Oh.
All right. Can I give one example of an AI that I think everyone has used, which is very controversial?
Okay.
It's because you're at Microsoft. Yeah. The example I always use of an AI is Excel. It's so in the rearview mirror, you have forgotten that the ability to do millions of calculations, complex calculations in a split second, would have been unimaginable in 1950.
All right, so I think everybody's going to...
Yeah, I think everybody's used Excel. But don't count that in the poll.
But you're right. You're right.
It's amazing.
It was one of the first predictive, really, programs that we were all using, Excel. What's that?
Before we get the answer, there's recently done a study in Switzerland actually on how many people in businesses actually use AI, and the answer, the study came to the conclusion that about 80% of people use AI almost on a daily basis for their work.
Interesting.
What scares me is if I look at, not 80% of the companies have a way for their people to actually use AI safely. So that's a bit the scary part, but 80% is a huge number in such a short time frame.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's amazing. I think, do we have the results? Are they there? Oh, here they are. Here we go. So daily, 58%. 59, still climbing. Have some.
90.
Yeah,
It's climbing as we watch it.
Yeah, yes. 31. It's actually kind of fun.
Like
I always
teach.
enjoy it. 31% use it weekly, 8% rarely, 2% never. Wow.
It's
Who
worth
are
checking
you?
out.
Oh, yeah.
All right. What do we think? I mean, are we at all surprised or by these results?
I think the 2% who say never must not appreciate that, like you said, Spotify playlist, Netflix recommenders,
Yeah, maybe just not
your
tech
Amazon recommendation. Like behind the scenes, there's a lot more AI in your daily life, I think. Or these are 2%. Well, we know they have a phone because they actually filled out the poll. So at least, okay, it can't be that they're total technophobes.
It's, yeah. Okay. Now we're back
More
to the
questions?
title of the.
Yeah, no.
I know, right? But actually, we have a lot of questions already coming in. But let's continue talking just for a little bit because, of course, we've already touched on it. There's always with AI, there's always the human element, right? And the interaction or the impact. You've already you touched a little bit on this. Maybe probably more than a little bit on the Mind on the Bicycle presentation. But how do you see these human traits coexisting then with even enhancing the AI?
I think
in economies.
I think something you said is the most fundamental thing, which is that when you leave very narrow problems and you move to anything in the world we inhabit, the objective, the goal, is never clear-cut, clearly specified, well specified in a data set. I think that's what makes automation so dangerous. Automation works well, not just when you have an algorithm that can do something, but when the objective is so specifiable that you can represent it in a data set or in code. How few problems in the business world have such even things that you think are well specified, like build a resume screener that finds a good employee. What's a good employee? I mean, yeah, we can come up with 8 proxies. How do you weight them? I don't know. So most problems, as you said, I think that's why it's almost inevitable that if we're going to use these tools, we have to confront the fact that we're going to have to drive them. And that interaction, I don't think is a convenient thing. It's an essential thing, unless, and that's what I see as dangerous, people destroy that complexity in the rush to automate. And that is happening in some places. Like even when you look at call centers, when people automate the call center, what do they look at? They look at a few metrics. But in many ways, for some firms, I'd be curious if this is true to yours, your call center employee is a big part of your brand. You spend millions, tens of millions on brand marketing over here. That's not part of what you did when you built your chatbot to automate the employee. You just left out huge components. And so I just fear that in a bunch of this work, when we automate, we have just narrowed our objective, much to our detriment.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that a little bit. So, because this absolutely touches on something we talk about internally at Zalando is, so even if, and I'll reflect back a little bit what I think I heard you say, is even if, say, especially Gen AI chatbot, or replacing customer service is often a Gen AI application, even if it performs better on average, it hallucinates, right? And these hallucinations mean you get a small number of extraordinarily bad customer experiences, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen
Yeah.
in the case of humans. And so I think when you talk about automating and bringing, so it's fine if I'm at my desk and it gives me a bad answer, I'll just say, okay, I'll ask it again, right? And that's the other thing about Gen AI. These one feature of them is that they roll the dice, right? You won't get the same answer twice. So in whatever you ask them, it'll roll the dice, and sometimes you get a bad roll. And so if you ask it again, you might get a better answer, or you might average the two answers, or take
This
the
is
best
how
from
my
each.
grad students treat me.
Yeah. So when you think about building those into automated processes within a company or within a society, I don't think I want a judge to roll the dice, right? I want some human judgment actually playing a role there. And I think that's also then a friction, is that for use cases where hallucinations are no big deal, fine, sure. But there are many, many use cases where those tail outcomes matter a lot. And then that reduces the attractiveness of the technology.
I mean, it's a super broad topic, and the way you just described it, I would like to say that depending on context, I would fully agree or fully disagree with what you're saying. So, as an example, when you look at AI application in the workplace, where the data set is not everything in the internet, but a more defined database of things that we deal with in an organization, then the results are very different. Mm-hmm. And there's much less hallucination and much better application. So if you think of a call center agent that can question the catalog or the data that's there right there when he speaks with a customer, and it's based on the information of the organization, then the results for the whole call are much better than in any case than if it's if the person is not using it. And I think the other piece to really keep in mind in that context is what you talked about when you talked about the different biases and so on. Humans also take decisions. They do. We don't use the word hallucinate because it's in a different context with humans, but humans make up things when they're very often not data-based in their decisions and in their reflections. And that's where AI can also help to make sure that that you have access to the data. In the past, that was super difficult because there's loads of data, even in a company, and really to find the right data and really go there and do the analysis, and I call up my CFO, and all of that has become a lot easier because I now have a way to interact with the data that helps me take a decision that's a lot more fact-based than it was in the past.
Yeah.
Can I give an example of a study that builds on what you're saying? You gave the example of the call center employee that then has an assistant. There's this fantastic study that looks at the effect of a chatbot assistant that just gives suggestions of what you might want to say, just suggestions of it. And what they found was, one, they found that it took the low-performing call center employees and really moved them up. Kind of obvious. But then that's where the story gets interesting. They used these examples where the chatbot had power outages, where it just went down for service. It wasn't power. And what they showed is that when it happened early, the low end of the distribution was just not very good. Mm-hmm. But after about 3 months, you could remove the chatbot completely, and the low employees were actually as good as the good employees. That it was a training tool as much as an assistant tool, which is fantastic if you think about what it was doing. Was it was taking the best employees on whom it was trained and kind of, helping the not as good employees learn a little bit. It was fantastic. It's just such a good study because it kind of shows how the two working together can be super powerful.
So I don't think we disagree at the end. What my earlier comment was about fully automated and automated, say Gen AI applications. But as an augmentation, I totally agree with you.
And I think that's the point.
Yeah.
It has to be an augmentation, a bicycle, a co-pilot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And this is where Microsoft is headed. augmentation or
That's
Copilot?
that's absolutely the strategy. That's why how we came up with that name, that brand name of Copilot in the first place, because the human will always be the pilot, the one that decides. Oftentimes I get a question whether management can be replaced by AI at some point, which is a similar question to what you alluded to earlier. And my answer to it is, absolutely no, because it's about the direction of the decisions that you take based on the information that you get that makes the difference. I can not imagine a world where AI takes the decisions for us, but it can help us a lot in the background. So imagine a world where, I don't know, you come into the office and in the morning you go through your emails, and then an autonomous agent has taken care of something. So they saw your email from a customer, they've gone into the CRM system and looked at the data that's available. They've added a little bit of what's happening in the context of the company right now, last quarterly earnings and so on. And it is sort of, rather you just opening that email, you get the full context already presented. I mean, that makes my life a lot easier. And that's the kind of, that's what I'm thinking about. It's always augmentation. It's never decision making, and it's never direction setting.
That's a fantastic example. I'll say one quick thing, which is, if you look at even very high-skilled workers, and you just look at what they do on a minute-by-minute basis, highly skilled, high-paid workers, so much time goes to incredibly rote activity. Like literal click on this, look at that, go to that, look at that. It's crazy. The amount of human capital you could free up is fantastic.
Yes, which kind of along the lines of something Catrin was saying, how are companies then leveraging AI to drive their business strategies, their competitiveness? Can you share some examples of how AI is doing this in the decision-making process?
Spend the rest of the afternoon with examples.
Just a couple. I'm sure they'll also chime in. So
I think just to, before I get into the examples, the question when I speak with companies, C-level, and they ask me, so how can I apply AI? Then my question back is, what is your most prominent business problem that you think technology can help you with? Because that's where it starts. It's about the business problem. It's not about using AI in that sense. So there's lots of examples, even in Switzerland, where we see a lot of application. By the way, rather quick. So Switzerland is very open-minded in trying out the technology. I talked about the 80% using it in the workspace. And we see, small startups. Planted is using it to do production line optimization and sustainability. Then there's ABBs using it in the shop floor to do machine human communication. We can see it in the life science companies that use it for drug development. There's a lot happening here. Customer experience is a lot. We talked about call center, but really making sure that those agents have all the information and automated and right at their fingertips. Because AI, Gen AI can listen to a phone call and actually provide you the information that the customer is asking for while you're still thinking or taking notes or typing something into the system. So those kinds of examples we see all the time.
Mm-hmm. Is this the same for e-commerce? Or?
Yeah. So I would yes. The short answer is yes, but I would add a little flavor in the sense that AI is a prediction technology, and prediction technologies have been around a long time. Right, so we've been using it for forecasting, we've been using it for recommendations, we've been using it for all kinds of things like this. What's relatively new in the last 3 years is the generative AI, right? So and I think here, at least for Zalando, we're using it quite a bit. So we have a new product called Zalando Assistant, which allows users, instead of typing what they're looking for, like summer dress, you can say, I'd like a summer dress for my daughter for a wedding we're having with her cousin or something, and then it'll use those fields to pick out the most relevant assortment. And I think, I mean, it's not ours, but I mentioned Spotify now has an AI DJ, right, which does the same kind of idea. They even have it, again, with generative AI. They license the voice of one of their employees so that they have then
An
like
actual
literally
voice,
an actual
human voice.
like being a DJ for whatever playlist. And you can say, can I have something like sort of bluesy rock, right, or something, or rocky blues, I don't know, either way. And so I think what you're seeing now is lots of companies exploring the application of generative AI. So at this conference I was at, for example, Amazon, a worker there was presenting work on titles for their product display pages, right? So often people say, God, I mean, there's like 70 words in that title, right? Is that really helpful? So there's, using Gen AI to not just on the title, but at various aspects, and again, trying to improve the customer experience, trying to enhance the the comprehensibility of their products.
And there's also a huge application in the legal area.
Sure.
So, analyzing contracts, a lot of insurers use it to actually compare contracts, find out the risk situation in a specific contract, and that just gives their staff a much different starting point to actually do the work that's really relevant in determining the risk that the company is taking. Another one is in finance, where I see a lot of application. Sales there's a lot of application in interacting with the CRM system, but also predicting where the business may go, and all of that is just a lot of data work in the way. But as you rightly say, AI, it's a combination of AI and Gen AI in a lot of cases. AI has been around for a long time, and Gen AI just makes the interaction so much easier and so much more convenient for even people with lower education levels, because they don't think of the shop floor example that I used, where you can actually interact with the machine through natural language rather than typing and entering a computer and all of that.
That just makes me wonder, Sendhil, is it equaling the playing? Is it leveling the playing field? When we look at inequality?
Well, let me argue there's one piece of inequality that's sort of lurking out in the background here, which we haven't touched on, which is, I think, all the business examples are companies doing what they should be doing, which is following profits and doing the things that make sense. But civil society is, I think, it's not, to even say they're way behind, they're not even in the race. And there are just as many important problems. I mean, you guys are correctly saying, well, we've had predictive stuff for a while. It's like civil society is not there. Mm-hmm. And just to make it as sharp as possible, think of how many people work just on the Spotify recommender system. Okay, just getting songs. Now, consider a student graduating, trying to figure out what would make a good career. A student entering college, trying to figure out what would make a major. An unemployed person trying to figure out where they should search. All these are recommender system problems. All of these people could use help on a problem that's just a little bit more important than what music I should listen to next.
Fair enough.
And the amount of money we have spent, resources we have spent on solving those recommender systems problems,
right?
It's not even the rounding. I mean, it is zero. And so civil society is so behind, it's sad. There are many, many, many problems that are as important as all the good business ones you guys have listed. Like, those should be solved, and they are being solved. But there's no opportunity for this. And so I'm actually a little despondent that so much of civil society has sort of so exclusively focused on the regulatory angle, which we need to, fine. The safety angle, that's fine. But there are real problems that real people have. In the US, we have very deep poverty. Mm-hmm. And if you're a low-income person, you have to navigate a bunch of benefits websites. Why is there no red tape copilot? I mean, like, those people need it as much, if not more, than coders. And you can just list these examples, and there's just not enough of a concerted effort to build algorithms in the public interest.
Why? Greg, you're itching.
I think it's it's on people like me. Yeah, I think that's the problem. I think that civil society needs academics initially to make the push to move from the world of R&D to do the kind of civil investment to say, look, let us build. It needs free labor because it's not going to be the profit motive. And academics, like David Yanagazawa-Andrade is trying to do some stuff in Ghana. There are people trying to do stuff. And I think we need to catalyze the kind of work that you need. That civil society on its own is not going to get there. I think academic R&D is the thing that's needed. And I think we just don't have enough of that. And I think you guys can bring a lot of talent to it too. I think there's enough talent. I think we can do this. And it's the biggest hole I see.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more. Both with the premise that there are huge problems in society that need work, and you asked why. I mean, economics is about incentives, right? So there's the profit motive, and therefore where you can earn greater profits, there's lots of work, and where there's not the profit motive, you don't see it, right? So I think we as a society then have to think about how do we provide incentives for. So and you articulated one. Academics can sort of work of their own sort of volition to try to increase public awareness, but ultimately I think, it's going to require concerted societal political effort to provide those incentives, to provide the data. I mean, that governments can do that. Governments have, you see this already in the Scandinavian countries where they have fabulous demographic and labor market data. But let's get other data and then provide that data to researchers who will happily give their time for free to have access to that kind of data to build the kind of recommender systems that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, yes, academia can help, but it's not entirely up to you. I think everyone has a role, and I include Microsoft has a role, and Microsoft talks about that role very openly. We're just, this year we're launching a program which is around educating, not our customers. So, the customer space is out of that. It's educating people in society, and that's, students, that is people that are between jobs. It's, many different, so where we're actually investing money into that. And there's many other pockets where we engage, and I think there is a responsibility of companies to engage in that. We will not, it will not be one party that solves it. That one is the good thing is we do have an opportunity here as well, and that goes a bit back to the point that you made. It's us who decide how this world is going to happen, and we do need regulation around the topic. We do need some rules, and that we set ourselves in how we want to use this technology. It is a defining technology that is, I would compare with when electricity was invented or when the printing press was invented. Like it's really big, and and that motivates me. We have an opportunity to define how we want to use it. We're not there in all places, but it can solve some of those big problems that we need to be solving as a society.
And you just mentioned regulation. I think you both mentioned it in passing, but I'm interested. Then, do governments need to be more proactive?
Yeah, I'm not so, and I'll let the other two speak to maybe the safety parts of regulation. Where I think governments do need to be proactive, and this actually touched on the beginning of your last question about inequality, right? Because I do fear that, look, we're from two big companies, right? And I do fear that, these are costly models to build, and they're costly models to apply. And I do think that there is, a tendency now. Of course, you can make them available as APIs to small and medium-sized businesses, but to the extent that I fear there may be a return to size in the application of these new technologies. In other words, bigger companies may be able to better exploit them than smaller companies, and I think there's a concern, at least on my part, in general, that we may have yet further incentives for inequality in society, and that is something that I think that governments have to consider, at least. Now, this is just conjecture. This is looking to the future, so it's not definitive in my mind, but it is definitely a concern. And then that, which feeds into, again, providing incentives for these tools to be used for the greater societal good. I think inequality can lead to the breakdown of civil society. I mean, I think we're seeing this certainly in the U.S. and to some extent in the U.K. Switzerland, we're actually quite lucky. But I worry that this is a force pushing us in an already dangerous direction.
Okay.
I'm sure
Role
you
of
have
government.
thoughts on regulation.
No, I mean, as I said before, I think regulation is absolutely necessary, and it is part of us deciding how we want to use the technology and what rules we want to give to the technology and how we want to use it for the benefit of society. There is huge risk of inequality, and we need to be mindful of that, and we need to address it. The good news is that all of us who are sitting here, we now have an opportunity to actually, and a responsibility to take those decisions and set the guardrails in the right way. So regulation is absolutely necessary. Do we get it always right in every place? Also, regulators to date are usually lawyers. Most of the time, it's lawyers. So now we expect those lawyers to understand a a complex technology, and they need to get it right. They know they need to get it right, and that's a huge burden on them as well. So how do the right, and that's something where academia must play a big role. How do the right people come together to collaborate on that and to help on that we set the right guardrails. But I see it as a positive. It's our responsibility, but also our opportunity to set those guardrails.
All right, so on a more positive note then, looking ahead, Sendhil, what excites you the most about AI's role in transforming the economy over the next decade? Maybe not automated, but augmented AI.
I think I started this work in 2012 because I did a lot of research. I'll make a long story short. A lot of research into what have been the transformative things in history. And historically, the most transformative things have been things that are not inventions, but inventions that change how we invent. And for me, what drew me to the machine learning work is that I was like, oh, this is a thing that can change how we invent, that can change how we discover. And so to me, the exciting part is that I think if we put it to that mindset, I truly think we have a chance to not get level gains, but actually grow through a period where we actually get gains in growth rates and sort of lasting gains in growth rates, because whenever the rate of innovation changes, growth rates themselves start to go up. And I think that's pretty fantastic, because I think prolonged periods of elevated growth are just fantastic for society. And maybe it's not 10 years, maybe it'll take 5 or 8 to get started, but I think over the next 20 years, I think I'm pretty excited about that possibility.
All right. Catrin.
I think it's two things. One is, as I said, the opportunity to actually solve some of the big issues that we have around so many health, around sustainability, equality. There's this huge opportunity if we get it right, and that excites me. I think the other piece is that if you again think back in industry, I mentioned the printing press before. The printing press was invented in Germany, but the best use of technology was not in Germany. It was in the Netherlands. They made use of the printing press in a much better way than Germany did. And what that says is, and that's the same with AI. You don't need the technology can be applied, and in a different place than it was invented. And I fundamentally believe that Switzerland, as an example, is a great with academia, the way academia, large companies, smaller companies, education, all of this comes together. There's a huge opportunity to for countries to make it their own and really improve in the context, and they don't have to have invented the technology to really put it into to good use for the country.
Really apply it.
Yeah. So my answer is going to be pretty similar to Sendhil's, which is, I agree that it's it's applications of the existing innovation. So innovations on top of the innovation, and especially if we just think of the language, ChatGPT, which everyone is familiar with, I think it's just an amazing tool for synthesizing enormous bodies of data, text, and if you look at the successful applications, things like drug discovery, and things like just natural language generation, it's then thinking, wow, I now have this incredible new tool that can do all that stuff. And I guess my only caveat, so I'm super excited about that, is that can be both used for good as well as ill, right? And so, we have to see how it plays. So I'm incredibly excited, but also a little bit scared.
I don't think you're alone. I don't think you're alone there. Speaking of a little bit scared, so we've quite a list of questions, but one of the most popular questions among the audience thus far is about labor, right? How it's going to impact your jobs. Now, we are going to get into that more in detail in the second part of the program, but to all of you, how can AI be used to upskill workers across different educational backgrounds rather than merely automating low-skilled roles? Who wants to take that first?
I just can't stop
You're
thinking about
to the labor.
I might as well. I can't stop thinking about the 2% of people who never used AI but came to an AI talk. I want to hear from them. No. And I also, as an American, I just learned that the Netherlands are not part of Germany. I mean, you learn something every day. I think that if you just go back to training at its core, training is very much one of the hardest human activities we have, like by far. It's got a bunch of components that make it very open for AI. So one component is that whenever we've had a successful training program, it's very hard to scale it meaningfully and keep the treatment effect, because it's a person delivering the training program. The next person isn't going to deliver it in the same way, and you just don't know how to keep that. So when I teach a class, the next person to teach, no, it's not that. But it's, so that element. The element of being able to experiment with curricula is very, very hard, because it's a person delivering it. You can't really change it around. So why I'm saying this is because I think people have overlooked the big hole inside of the economy that is training and education. It's kind of the core for upskilling, but we've not had that much fundamental innovation in that area. And between the language capacities of these algorithms, the real-time ability to experiment with them, a variety of things, I think we're going to see a flourishing of just breakthroughs in training and education. And I think that's going to be the primary vehicle by which we'll see a fundamental change in how skilling happens and reskilling happens.
So
People are still involved.
Let me be a little more pessimistic in the sense that, no, I don't. So first of all, I'm a competition economist, not a labor economist, and the next panel will be able to give you the expert opinion on this. But I think if we come back to the issue of incentives, right? So I think at the moment, firms will have incentives to maximize profits, and if they can maximize profits by augmenting some of their labor force, and with these tools, and there are a fixed set of tasks, that's a key assumption, then they're going to need less labor, right? And so I totally agree that these technologies have incredible potential for upskilling and training and customized, personalized education. But, and again, I'm not an expert on this, but if I, as a non-expert, look at sort of the impact of globalization over the last 50 years, it was an incredible efficiency gains, but there were losers. And those gains weren't necessarily shared with the losers, right? So if these gains are not shared with the losers, then we're going to have trouble. Or it's going to be trouble for the losers, right? So that's why I'm concerned.
And again, not alone. The audience is also concerned. How does AI affect economic inequalities? What steps should be taken to make these technologies accessible in less developed regions and socioeconomic groups? We touched on this a little bit, but is there something to add?
It's a very important question. Let me start there, because of course there is a risk that we broaden, make the divide even worse. And so it's exactly the right question to ask, and I know that we are working on that question. We're actually developing not only strategies, but we already have things in place. We're working with humanitarian organizations and so on to actually get to that. But it's difficult. It is hard. You get to very fundamental questions around. You can't use AI, and I'm sure that's one of the questions, without electricity. Well, if you're in an environment, in a country where electricity is scarce, then before you help people with AI, you need to go back and make sure that you can provide the electricity that is necessary, and so on. So it's a whole tale of questions, and you can go to our website. We have a lot of material there of thinking, but we're thinking about it. We're developing. We're taking step by step. It's questions that we are asking. We can't. Again, we cannot solve on our own, but it is absolutely top of mind. And that's what I meant when I said there's a lot of responsibility that comes with building technology.
I want to pause really quick and see if there's any questions in the room. Right here, we have a couple. Okay, good. We'll start. Oops, sorry. We're going to start with the gentleman in the front. Thank you.
Should I introduce myself?
Yes, just say your name, your affiliation.
Okay. So my name is Hani Selim. I'm a Swiss citizen, originally from Egypt, educated in Boston, Massachusetts, and soon the founder of a Center for Science and Strategic Studies. So my question goes to Mr. Sendhil. How do you assess AI agents' potential in revolutionizing economics decision-making in a way that could radically change the future of different sectors of an economy in a country like the US?
So just to unpack that a little bit, I think AI agents, for those of you who are not familiar, is I would say one of the new hot areas that people are getting into, which is agents that can go and act on your behalf, starting with the simplest thing, being able to surf the web, being able to do things, click, download, do things like that, but then more and more complex stuff. I would say that the way in which I think AI agents, if built well, could have pretty seismic effects on the economy as a whole is that big fractions of the economy in the United States depend on what I would call customer confusion. I mean, it's just a fact. Like huge parts. From things as big as mortgages to things as everyday as what cable company should you be in. Customer confusion is a very clear-cut strategy involving you present stuff in a way that to the person looks one way, et cetera, et cetera. I think depending on how AI agents shake out, we could see a shift in the balance of power because at some level, the AI agent can read the thing for you, and as you said with the insurance agents, now you can have this thing explained to me. Yeah, I've looked at all these. Don't worry about this. There's a late fee on this one. There's a whatever on this one. I'm giving the most optimistic version, but the point is that I think I'm just emphasizing that the economy as a whole has relied a lot on a sort of friction at that transaction stage, and I think those frictions are about to change, hopefully for the better, but you never know what these things end up doing.
So if the incentives are there to create them, right? Yeah. So I think we keep coming back to that there are incredible potentials for applications. And I think then, look, even for your inequality question, I think we as a society know how to deal with inequality. The question is there the political will to implement those solutions, right? So that's really the question. And that's a question then for the public at large and how decisions get made, political decisions get made.
We don't have a lot of time. There's so many good questions. By the way, the skyscrapers in Dubai, just FYI.
Yeah. I was just messing around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody wanted to make sure that you got the answer
is not
to that.
Netherlands is not in Germany? Why does it sound like a German name? I don't. Anyway.
Oh my goodness! All right. So this is also a very popular one. What happens to our cognitive skills when we consciously stop challenging ourselves? There's a lot of.
I think
murmuring in the room.
I think this is amongst the big hidden risks. I think this is a massive risk. It's the things that worry me most about automation is that people forget how malleable the human mind is. We've already had this once with smartphones and ever-present technologies. At least speaking for myself, it's a real much harder effort to focus today than it ever was, and I don't mean even if the phone is out of the way. It's just my muscles of focus have really changed. And so I think we are conducting massive neurological experiments on ourselves at scale that I don't think anybody realizes that we're doing, and I don't think anybody's tracking, and it's not intentional.
It's not an experiment. There's no control group.
Yeah, there you go. There's no control. Well, no, we've learned there's 2%. Okay. I don't know. I admittedly a small control group, but still.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on. We've got another one here. There's a lot. There's a lot of interest and concern about inequality. We've also got financial. So if AI will give advanced, superior financial advice, shouldn't it make everyone that uses it ultra wealthy? Or will there be guardrails to prevent that?
Who's against everyone being ultra wealthy? What do you mean? You think guardrails against everyone being ultra wealthy?
I think maybe they're thinking guardrails like to keep you out of the ultra wealthy category. I think that's more the meaning there. So
I started talking. Okay,
yes.
I guess I'll take this one. No, I mean, to the extent that it democratizes access to information, like the example Sendhil gave earlier, and not only access to information, but how to use that information in an effective way, I think this is in general going to be good, right? I mean, and especially, I don't know about that it'll make everyone ultra wealthy, but I do think in terms of preventing some of the big mistakes that individual consumer, I've advocated for 20 years that I'm American, but like in high schools in America, that the basic principles of the simplest finance should be taught in high school, right? I mean,
yes.
What's a mortgage, right? Or
yes.
and so to the extent that these tools can make that information readily accessible, and even you can feed it a mortgage, like you can literally input a mortgage contract. Is this good for me or not, right? I mean, that's actually quite innovative. So I think it's rather more a little bit like your example with the call center employees, bringing up the people who might otherwise be exploited than necessarily superpowering everyone in the upper tail would be my guess. But
can I say something about the inequality since that keeps coming up?
Yeah.
There's sort of been quite a few studies now that have studied the effect of largely generative AI in a variety of workforce contexts, and I've been surprised at how they've all shown roughly the same thing, irrespective of cost. They've all shown that it has been an inequality reducer, because the kind of things it can do is to kind of lift up the less productive employees and equalize. And so I think that's worth, no doubt there will be inequality induced by the fact that sectors are going to change, people are going to have to move between this stuff, but it is worth noting this technology at its heart, all the studies so far seem to suggest, roughly speaking, it is an inequality reducer. And that at least kind of offsets some of the fears we should have, not all.
Okay.
No, a really short one, just a fun one. So I work at a German company where English is the language of the company, the official language of the company. ChatGPT has totally. I mean, I'm a native English speaker. Huge advantage, right? In meetings and in documents. In person. But especially for documents, ChatGPT is a super leveler. So, and my wife is Austrian, right? So she's constantly using it just to reshape an email, summarize her text. So, I mean, really, you talk about in an inequality reducer. I think for translation, it's absolutely fabulous. So.
Okay, well, good. Well, anyway, both of those comments are great lead-ins to the next section of the event and our next panel. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here, for your insights. It was really good. Really, really good.
Well done.